Hi, I'm Kinkas and I'm a synth DIY guy. Welcome to this channel where we talk about building modular synthesizers as well as using them to make music. If you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and hit like, subscribe. I know you're going to like this video. This is really exciting for me today because I'm approaching my own goal as a musician with a performance system here. I put together this quarantine box that I take around the house while I watch the girls, do chores and whatnot. And it includes some of the modules that I'm currently studying, and they also happen to be a great combination to perform experimental electronic music with, especially using the Sensel Morph as a controller. And what you see here is actually the Innovator Overlay, which is this transparent overlay. And what's underneath is a piece of paper that I printed out from the Overlay Designer software, right? So I designed this control surface. This is a unique controller that I designed myself to use with the Sensel Morph. And what it is, it's very simple. It's just 8 XYZ pads. So the x-axis is the horizontal movement on each pad. The y-axis is the vertical movement, and z-axis is the pressure, right? So I have 8 pads times 3 control signals. That's 24, and that's exactly how many outputs I have on my Expert Sleepers FH2 setup right here, because I have the FH2 plus 2 expanders. That's 8 outputs each one times 3, 24. And as you can see, I've got Tendrils cables connected to every single one of the 24 outputs and distributed amongst the modules here. The Tendrils are actually really nice for this because, as you can see, there's no spaghetti monster getting in the way of my screens and my knobs. So it makes it very playable, very manageable, and I can slip this in a backpack without being worried that I will break jacks or cables. So without further ado, let me explain how I've mapped out all of the control data from the Sensel Morph to this patch right here. This is definitely a more experimental patch. I'm not going to be playing bass lines and melodies with it. It's more of a drone noise soundscape kind of a thing. So let's start from left to right. The Dust of Time is a stereo duo macro oscillator, and it's got its own modulation sources, many different methods of synthesis, and it's got 2 sides, and it's got its own VCA. So when I press the pressure itself is the volume, right? So I'm not even using an envelope. The envelope is my own manual. And as you can hear already, the vertical movement is the pitch, right? So it goes from very low here to pretty high pitch over there. Now left and right are the left and right oscillators on my first Dust of Time right here. So this one is kind of a wave folding, wave shaping algorithm, and this one is a harmonic oscillator. These 3 pads right here are controlling those parameters, which is pitch, amplitude, and left and right. And the Piston Honda over here is actually a dual oscillator as well. And on this one, I actually have the pitch for each oscillator on the X and Y axes, and the pressure is volume as well. So these are how I play sort of volume and pitch and choose the sounds. Now these 3 are also related to the same 3 oscillator modules, but they affect different parameters. So if I choose left side here, I've got the 2 parameters that correspond to these 2 knobs on the left oscillator of the first Dust of Time available right here. So already that can be a really cool drone right there. Just hold a note here, maybe modulate its amplitude by changing the pressure. I can make it pulsate sort of. So it's very expressive and musical, the way that I can perform in a very tactile way with this. Smoothly and musically modulate the parameters here. Now the right side of the first dot fades into a harmonic oscillator. And now my vertical movement here on pad number 4, the blue pad, goes through the different harmonics, emphasizes the different harmonics. So right there, that would be a pretty cool patch to perform with already. Just one dust of time with all of its parameters mapped out to touch surface right here, right? Now I have the same thing happening with dust of time number 2, except that it's got different synthesis methods, right? So this is another harmonic oscillator, but a different setting. And over here, we have a swarm oscillator. Oh, no, it's not, but let's change it. Here in the dust of time, I can see by turning this knob to the left, I can see that I'm using the harmonic oscillator with the odd harmonics. And to the right, I have the FM oscillator. So there's no swarm at all. So let's change this to a swarm oscillator. Extend swarm. Let's hear that. So that's very cool. Center the knob here. And now here we have the harmonic oscillator. As I move my left finger to the right, we have faded out the harmonic oscillator and we're now listening to a swarm oscillator. And here are the parameters. Very cool. So again, right here I have the controls for dust of time number 1. And here for dust of time number 2. Now Piston Honda again, vertical pressures volume, and vertical and horizontal are the pitches of each oscillator. So and over here, I have the 3 morphing parameters for the wavetables on the Piston Honda. So these 3 sliders are now pressure, vertical, and horizontal movement on the green, the light green pad over here. So check that out. A plethora of timbres at my fingertips here, right? Now, since I didn't use the pressure on these 2 pads, I've assigned the pressure to alternative controls. So on this one, it's the Piston Honda FM amount. So basically when I push in on this one, while I'm listening to Piston Honda, I'm FMing oscillator 1 with oscillator 2. So oscillator 2 is doing frequency modulation of oscillator 1. So that's another option there that I have available. That's a lot of controls. Now these 2 pads over here are the effects, which is my Monsoon module in looping delay mode. The vertical movement here is the wet dry for the delay, and on this pad vertical movement is wet dry for the reverb. So here's a lot of reverb. I can bring that down very easily, right? And this is the wet for the delay. Side to side is delay time. So that's a slow delay time. and I can speed it up. And pressure is the feedback. So if I press down, I can get almost eternal feedback and then quickly lift my finger and cut it off, right? This is the coolest way I've ever controlled a delay in my life. And of course, this is the volume right here. So yeah, it takes a little practice, takes a little getting used to. I've been developing this patch for the last couple of days and practicing anytime I have a moment. You may notice that I've put on a piece of masking tape here, which not only helps label and helps remind me what the pads are doing, but it also keeps the overlay steady, because sometimes when I'm applying pressure and then the overlay is only held by magnets, so sometimes I happen to pull it off. So I figured this is a good idea. I killed two birds with one stone. I get a mnemonic device here to remind me what each pad is doing, and it also keeps the overlay nice and steady right there. Just quickly recapitulating, we have dust of time control number 1 on these two pads, dust of time 2 on these two pads, Piston Honda on these two pads, and effects on these two pads. Oh, and I forgot, I also had pressure available on this one, so I made a patch on the Kermit where channels 1 and 2 are sine wave oscillators, channels 3 and 4 are random voltage generators, and the pressure here is opening the amplitude and the pitch of the two oscillators, while pressure of this pad, which I hadn't used, is changing the time of the random sequence. So this is another sound right here, a kind of a random voltage. Oh, it's a little loud. Let's turn it down a little bit. I have my ST mix right here. It's the analog section of this patch is basically just a couple of VCAs for the Piston Honda, a stereo mixer by Bifaco, and my output module. Everything else is digital. And here's the speed. And again, I have reverb. So yeah, this is extremely expressive and I'm going to have a lot of fun.